This is Danish Info News TV, a Danish English updates on tensions over the Arctic. Greetings and welcome to this latest update on how external pressure by the United States is creating tensions between Denmark and Greenland. Tensions between the United States, Denmark and Greenland have resurfaced in 2026, reigniting a long-simmering debate over sovereignty, strategic influence, and the legacy of colonial relationships. In the wake of U.S. operations in Venezuela, Washington has renewed its focus on Greenland's strategic location in the Arctic, prompting concerns from both Nuuk and Copenhagen. The crisis highlights a complex balancing act: Denmark's historical authority over Greenland, Greenland's legal and political push for self-determination, and U.S. ambitions to secure its military and economic interests in the Arctic. Recent events, including high-stakes teams meeting, public statements from U.S. officials, and disputes over Greenland's role in foreign policy, underscores how historical grievances, economic independencies, and Arctic security concerns intersect in a rapidly evolving power dynamic. Neo-colonialist accusations and Danish-Greenlandic tensions. Greenlandic politicians have increasingly accused Denmark of neo-colonialist behavior in 2026. Pippa Luklyngge, chair of Greenland's Foreign and Secretary Policy Committee, criticized Denmark for excluding Nuuk from meetings about U.S. relations, describing it as a neo-colonialist way to exclude us. A hastily convened teams meeting between Danish and Greenlandic politicians became confrontational. Greenlandic representatives, visibly angry, demanded the right to communicate directly with Washington without Copenhagen as intermediary, a step that challenges the Danish government's formal authority under the constitution. During the meeting, Danish parliamentarians attempted to reassure their Greenlandic counterparts that the Greenlandic government remained closely involved in diplomatic discussions and that physical presence is required at top-level UPN meetings. However, frustrations persisted over delays in sharing confidential information and the perception that Denmark still treats Greenland as subordinate rather than equal. Concerns were also raised about the meeting's security. Held on a standard Teams channel, it may have been monitored by external actors including U.S. officials, highlighting the delicate nature of diplomatic communications under increasing international scrutiny. U.S. involvement and strategic interests. The U.S. has shown renewed interest in Greenland following its operations in Venezuela, seeing the island as critical for Arctic and North Atlantic security. Statements from officials including Senator Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Jeff Laundry signal planned direct engagement with Denmark, but Greenlandic politicians are pushing for parallel channels to Washington. Former NATO and U.S. Ambassador Lone Denker-Wisborg suggested that the U.S. may employ a mix of economic incentives and diplomatic pressure to influence Greenlandic opinion while indirectly challenging Denmark's authority. While military intervention is unlikely, U.S. strategy could involve economic leverage, investments and development projects that create dependency. Political messaging, framing Greenland as a strategic ally to bypass Copenhagen's authority. Diplomatic influence, reinforcing Greenland's autonomy in foreign relations to increase U.S. negotiation leverage. Greenland has responded by asserting that it can and should engage with Washington directly on issues affecting its territory, particularly given the strategic importance of bases like Thule Pitofik for NATO operations. Historical context and the roots of tension. The current tensions are shaped by centuries of history. Colonial legacy. Greenland was a Danish colony until 1953, when it became an equal part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Full home rule was introduced in 1978, and self-rule in 2009 granted Greenland substantial autonomy, including the legal right to pursue independence through a referendum. Past controversies. Historical grievances, such as the spiral saying, in which Greenlandic women were subjected to medical procedures without consent, continue to influence the Greenlandic perception of Denmark. Geopolitical history. U.S. recognition of Danish sovereignty over Greenland dates back to 1916, yet Washington has periodically expressed interest in the island due to its strategic location and resources. Greenlandic autonomy and power dynamics in 2026. Formerly part of the Rigsfællesskabet, Greenland today has legislative and executive authority over most internal affairs. Self-governing powers. Education, healthcare, natural resources, fisheries, taxation, and infrastructure. Greenland controls its own budget and assumes financial responsibility for areas it takes over from Denmark. Rigs authorities. Denmark retains control over foreign affairs, defense, currency, and constitutional matters, though Greenland has a growing role in Arctic diplomacy and NATO discussions. Economic leverage. Greenland depends on Denmark for roughly 4 billion Danish kroner in annual block grants, about half of its self-government revenue, but hopes to diversify income through fishing, rare minerals, and other resources. The political dynamic in 2026 reflects a complex balance. Greenland asserts a stronger voice internationally, leveraging its strategic position in the Arctic and relationships with the US. Denmark continues to retain formal authority, but must navigate Greenlandic demands for equal participation and influence. US involvement has heightened Greenlandic ambitions and occasionally exacerbated tensions with Copenhagen, particularly when Washington signals interest in bypassing Danish authority. Economic and security factors. Economic independence. Greenland's path towards sovereignty requires reducing reliance on Danish block grants while maximizing resource extraction and investment in education and infrastructure. Fisheries remain critical, but resource projects like Kvanefjeld generate internal debate over environmental impact and feasibility. Security leverage. Greenland's Arctic location makes it vital for NATO and US defense interests. Washington's interest in Thule Pituffik and Arctic surveillance enhances Greenlandic bargaining power. Denmark's investment in Arctic defense infrastructure are increasingly contingent on Greenlandic participation and local benefits, including jobs and training. Area authority in 2026 key challenge. Economy. Greenland budget control, Denmark block grant. Replacing 4 billion Danish kroner block grant. Foreign policy. Formerly Denmark, but Greenland has increased Arctic role. Desire for direct US engagement. Defense, Denmark, NATO, US presence. Greenland demands local participation. Natural resources. Greenland 100% balancing development versus environment. Recent events and flashpoints. Teams meeting crisis. Frustration over exclusion from confidential UPN meetings highlighted Greenlandic demands for full participation and direct US dialogue. US-Denmark tensions resurface after US operations in Venezuela, with Washington pressing for Arctic influence and demonstrating strategic interest in bypassing Denmark if necessary. Diplomatic engagements. Rubio and Laundry announced meetings with Denmark. Greenlandic politicians continued advocating for parallel dialogue channels with Washington. Conclusion. By 2026, Greenland has become a more assertive actor within the Rigsfællesskabet, leveraging both its legal autonomy and strategic location to assert influence. While Denmark retains formal authority, Greenland's insistence on direct engagement with the US signals a shift toward multipolar decision-making within the kingdom. The crisis underscores the ongoing tensions between historical colonial structures and modern self-determination ambitions, compounded by strategic competition in the Arctic. Greenland's path forward involves balancing economic independence, security cooperation, and diplomatic assertiveness, while Denmark must adapt to a new reality in which Greenland's voice is indispensable. The latest is that Greenland will participate in the upcoming US-Denmark meeting, announced by US Secretary of State Marco Rubio next week. Foreign Minister Vivian Molsfildt emphasized nothing about Greenland without Greenland and confirmed she will personally attend the meeting, which Greenland itself requested. The coming month will test whether the Rigsfællesskabet can navigate these tensions without splitting, as all parties, Nuuk, Copenhagen and Washington, seek to protect their interests amid a changing Arctic geopolitical landscape. That's the latest on the US-Denmark-Greenland crisis. Don't miss updates. Like, share and subscribe to Danish Info News TV. Hit the bell to follow every development in this high-stakes Arctic story.